Good morning. Welcome to Giraffe Chat Thursday. My name is David McCain. I'm the owner, trainer, and coach with Communicating with Heart, and I'm here to talk about communication, to give you some tips about how to communicate more effectively. And today I'm going to be talking about whether people are monsters. Are people monsters? And this relates to an email newsletter that I received from a politician with the subject line, locking up the monsters that prey on our children. And this kind of triggered me. This is something that upset me a little bit. And so I took a second or two to kind of connect with myself and really get clear that yesterday on Facebook, I posted the question that's often on my mind around my work in the world, which is, how can we make life more wonderful? And I mean that for everybody. I don't mean that just for people like me. I don't mean that just for Americans, but I mean that really for everyone. How can we make life more wonderful for everyone? That's what I'm after. And when I see a characterization of people that are doing things that I certainly don't like, that I am offended by, that I'm appalled by in terms of treating children in ways that don't honor their well-being, when I see a characterization of them as monsters, it kind of hits me in the heart. It hits me in the heart because once you call someone a monster, you're denying their humanity. You're denying any potential for change in them. And for me, history has shown us very clearly that when we're dehumanizing people, we're creating a separation that can lead to great violence. So I had a couple choices in how I responded to this. I could have chosen jackal responses with Jack here, and I could have certainly called up or written an email like, how could you write that? That's so disrespectful. Don't you know that people are killed when they're dehumanized, that that's a path towards great violence? Don't you remember the Nazis, what the Germans said? So this was a way of expressing myself that really doesn't work, number one, and it takes the same energy of someone being labeled as a monster and turning it right back at that other person. They're not monsters, you're monsters. And this is what we're trained to do. This is what I was trained to do, to really use language that's separated. And especially when someone else is using that language with us, I respond in kind. So I chose a different tack. I chose a different approach. And what I did first was try to get clear on what was important for me when I hear a statement like this or read a statement like this. I've mentioned that a little bit. I think what I'm shooting for is the well-being of everyone, and language that really honors everyone's humanity. And our language is so powerful that, especially when someone's in a place of power, a politician, when they're using language that dehumanizes, and we're seeing this so often on the political stage these days, when language is used that dehumanizes, that judges, it really is something that creates an energy, it creates a way of being that isn't about helping people make their lives wonderful. So I really got in touch with that, wanting a sense of respect for others, a sense of honoring others' well-being. And from there, I said, well, why don't I reach out? Why don't I call this politician and see where that goes? So this politician has a couple offices in my state, and I called the local one and had a pretty good conversation with the staff person there, and talked to her a little bit about my concerns, which was helpful. She said she'd forward the message to Washington, D.C., and I figured I might as well just call Washington, D.C. to make it a little easier. So I called and left a message for their communications director, this politician's communications director, and he called me back, which is pretty cool. He called me back, and we had a great conversation. I want to talk a little bit about that conversation. Again, had I come from this place of the jackal, and come to him with an energy of violence and anger, that wouldn't have gotten anywhere. But I was able to connect with myself and come with the energy of the giraffe, the symbol of compassionate communication. So in that conversation, I told him my concern, and he was able to hear it, and then I was able to hear from him. And he said to me, he said, you know, we're getting screamed at. You know, I'm glad you're giving this feedback, because most people call up angry and say, shut up. So I gave him some empathy, that it's not much fun oftentimes to be receiving these kind of calls. And he could really hear me. He could really hear when I told him that it's important to me that we treat all people with humanity. He could hear that, and he expressed a little regret. He said that, you know, we wanted to have a hard line. We wanted to be tough on that. And perhaps we could have used better language. And in the end, he promised that he'd go back to his team that creates these newsletters and share my feedback. So I think he felt pretty good about it. I wasn't screaming at him. I wasn't giving him the jackal treatment. I was actually coming from a place of caring and centeredness. And I felt pretty good because I felt heard in what I had to say, and there was a kind of agreement that he would go forward with my feedback and try, have that influence what happens next. So I don't think people are monsters. I think people are people that do things that we don't like. And for me, when we can use language that respects their humanity, there's actually a space for change. There's a space for rehabilitation. There's a space for movement. However, when we're using monster language, then we really foreclose any opportunity to connect and to get change. So thank you so much for being part of today's Giraffe Chat Thursday. And thank you for doing what you can to create a world where everyone communicates with heart. Bye-bye.